Greg Moore, AZ Central Sports. Shane Dale, ABC 15. Paul Richardson, The Sports Cave. Dana Scott, AZ Central Sports. The Suns have a new head coach. I was there. Paul was there. These guys are up to speed. Paul, what were your first impressions?
I love the fact that he answered everything truthfully, honestly. There was no dancing around. It was the first question out the gate when he said, they offered me the job. Why did you take the job? They offered me the job. Showed humility, talked about his past, and mistakes he's made, things he's learned. Love the hire. I love Monty Williams.
You were there too, Shane.
I was there.
Yeah, Shane was there. I talked to him yesterday. That's how he's here. Go ahead. Tell me, what did you think?
Well, first of all, let's start with the firing Igor Kokoshkov. I don't necessarily think that was necessary. I mean, I think it was way too early to know whether he was going to be effective long term. With that said, that was obviously Ryan McDonough's hire, not James Jones's. And I like the Monty Williams hire. I like it. I think he's gained a wealth of knowledge both on and off the court since his last coaching stint at New Orleans. He's served as an assistant with Team USA. Gained some front office experience with the Spurs, part of the Sixers playoff run last season. Of course, he talked to our sports director, Craig Fouy, about the tragedy with his wife passing away and just some of the perspective he's gained from that and how he might be able to pass that on to his players as well. So just in terms of a combination of coaching experience and wisdom, we actually have a head coach with head coaching experience now, which is a plus. Being able to mentor and groom young players, I think it's a fantastic hire, whether Kokoshkov was ready to go or not.
Dana, what do you think?
I wasn't there, but I did see the replay of the press conference. Monty Williams is a product of Popovich, the front office and coaching family tree. I like what he said when he was mentioning how, like Popovich likes to do with his offense. He likes to wear teams down for 3 quarters with ball movement and player movement, and then the fourth quarter they just go and they're able to basically push the score up by 10, and then he's going to figure out how to get these players together with the talent that they have to get in sync with each other, and before figuring out what system he's going to utilize to make them effective. But they're going to go through DeAndre and through Devin to push this team together for the near future.
So Monty actually spoke to that a little bit. I asked him a couple of questions after the news conference. Said he was going to simplify the offense, right? Devin Booker's had, 3-4 coaches in the last 3 or 4 years. Earl, Jay Triano, Igor. Now, Monty.
You forgot Hornacek.
Yeah, Jeff.
Hornacek.
This is the 5th.
It's 5
Jeff came
coaches.
before Earl, yep.
A lot of systems
Yes.
that a guy would have to learn. Monty said that as a player, it all kind of runs together. And if it all runs together, then who's to say what you do and when based on your system? So Monty said the first thing to do is simplify it. Then he said he's going to work through DeAndre and work through Devin. That led me to think about the pick and roll. Does anybody have any thoughts on the way the offense would best run given the personnel that you know that you have?
One thing that I did not like last year with DeAndre was he caught the ball a lot in positions where he couldn't score.
Top of the key.
Up at the top of the key, which really made you play 4-on-5 offense.
Right. Late in the shot clock at that.
So I think by putting him in positions, maybe putting him on the block, maybe doing some of the things that Portland did with Enes Kanter, where he's like off elbow, where he's in his range to shoot.
Yeah.
I love everyone wants to shoot a 3, every big wants to shoot 3s, but when you're touching the ball that far out, it makes it hard to initiate offense for you. And I hope that's one thing you do, because I didn't think Igor put Ayton in good positions when he did that.
You're talking about actually calling plays for DeAndre Ayton in the future.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about, right?
Shocking.
And he still averaged a double-double.
He still averaged a double-double.
16 and 10.
He was named to the All-Rookie First Team yesterday on, what day is it? It's Tuesday. Tuesday he got named.
Yes.
So the thing is that Ayton was put in a position up top where he wanted to Igor was trying to basically utilize his skill set as a shooter from the outside. He says he can't hit that 3. He just doesn't use it. Also, with Ayton, I think that he, like you wrote last summer about the Ayton pick, going number 1 overall, this is a positionless league, and trying to figure out how to use a center in a positionless league. That is something that Igor tried to do to basically expand his, repertoire a little bit, give him a feel of what it's like on the perimeter, because that's the future of what they're going to do with Devin and other guys like Mikal Bridges and Josh Jackson basically playing along that side, and so they're familiarizing Ayton out there is part of what they were trying to do. I think that he didn't have the skill set early enough to do that, but that will come in time.
Yeah.
One thing I was concerned with was that you would see the offense would be sort of a motion offense up top, but the shooters on the wings weren't shooters, right? You had slashers on the wings, and they weren't really getting the ball in the best position to take advantage of their skill set. Monty said that he was going to try to do what he could to take advantage of the team that he's got. Mikal being the one player who was there at the announcement yesterday, he's got to figure to be a key cog in what they're going to be doing moving forward. Monty said he could compare to Michael Cooper from the Lakers. I don't like the Lakers, but I like Michael Cooper's game as a model for Mikal Bridges. Let's move on from that a little bit. Let's talk about what the offseason plans could be. We know that Monty was with Team USA. We know that Monty was with the Spurs. We know that James Jones has talked about the draft as a way to improve the team. His free agency as a way to improve the team. We know that Monty's got good relationships around the league. We know that Kyrie Irving could be free. We know that possibly Kevin Durant could come free. We know that, who am I missing?
Kawhi Leonard.
All the
Kawhi
Ks,
Leonard.
Kawhi, Kemba,
Yeah.
and we got a lot of other Ks coming.
And then there's the number 6 pick overall, right? You could trade up. You could try to work that in a package for Anthony Davis. Again, Monty's got a strong relationship there. My question to you guys is, given what you know right this second, what would be your first priority to try to improve the team this summer?
Certainly the first 3 priorities have got to be point guard, and point guard.
Right.
I mean, so the big question is, do they get one in the draft, do they get even younger, or do they go try to find one in free agency? So obviously, you look at most of the mock drafts, Darius Garland out of Vanderbilt is the guy, with Ja Morant seemingly out of the picture now. Definition of a high-risk, high-reward guy. We didn't see much of him in college at all.
Right.
5 games, I think, before he hurt his knee.
What I say, 4 games in 1 minute?
4 games in 1 minute. So we'll be generous. We'll round up, be generous, and say 5.
Right.
But there are some guys, there are some experts that thought that he was even better than Morant going into last season. So it's just a matter of if you want to gamble on him, or if you want to scour the free agent market, whether it's Patrick Beverley or Kemba Walker or Terry Rozier. So they have plenty of options. It's just a matter of whether they want to go high risk, high reward with and get even younger at pick number 6, or if they want to go a different direction.
What would you do?
This is going to sound crazy, but I like Ricky Rubio.
Yeah.
Because what
That
you
is
don't
crazy.
need is another point guard that wants to worry about scoring.
Okay.
Now, he shoots well enough.
Yeah.
He's not a great shooter, but he shoots well enough. And like most people that can't shoot, he can shoot a 3,
Okay.
which is the weirdest thing in the world. I still don't
Right.
understand how further makes you better. But he can shoot a 3. And then, here's where you guys are really going to look at me, and I pulled this up in this order for a reason. See if you can get Derrick Rose to come as a backup. Because that's going to give you veteran pop off the bench. You already know he's going to only give you about 68 to 70 games because something's going to happen.
Right.
And he's looking to get back in a good situation. Monty Williams is the perfect situation, I think, for him because he understands veterans, he understands minutes, he understands workload. So now you have a starting point guard in Ricky Rubio, and you have a backup point guard. And then you take the pick, and I think you draft but the best at that position, and now you're having a young guy that you can develop without having to rush
And
to
play.
develop them. And so I think that would be the move to go.
I like that.
What's Rubio's situation?
He's unrestricted.
Jazz? Okay.
Restricted.
Unrestricted.
There's going to be a lot of behind-the-back passes that Aiden's going to have to learn to catch, down in the block from
Yeah.
him, right?
Yep. Yep.
So it just comes out to be one of the things that, with Arsenal or, passing ability that he has, that's something that Devin can, play more off the ball in his natural position as a 2.
Yeah.
You like Rubio?
I do like Rubio.
If you
I've
didn't
always
get
liked
Rubio, why wouldn't you keep Kokoshkov?
Why? Look, I liked Igor. I really did. But I think he was put in a failed position to begin with.
Okay.
You hired a first-time coach
Yeah.
with a young team
Yeah.
and then gave him Isaiah Canaan as his point guard.
Yeah.
You basically said to him,
I thought Kanan was going to be better than he was. Go ahead.
well, but Canaan, his entire career has been a come-off-the-bench spot guy, give you some instant points, get back on the bench. When you put him in that position to run an offense of young guys with a young coach, you just said, you know what, forget this season. We're done because we're going to set you up to fail. And I don't mean they did that purposefully.
Right, but that's what happened.
But that's what happened.
Yeah, I think also I would be shocked. All due respect to Igor, I'd be shocked if he was their first pick last year for head coach. Monty Williams is probably their number one pick. If you listen to what Jerry Colangelo said, Robert Sarver reached out to him about Monty Williams, which is to me is a great step in the right direction. I know we'll get to that more in just a minute, but that to me is a positive development. The fact that not only did they get a coach with, lo and behold, head coaching experience, but they got a head coach who was probably toward the top of their list and who the Lakers also coveted. That to me is at least not a bad sign for the future.
There's also a veteran who played in the NBA. I mean, Earl played in the NBA. Jeff Hornacek played in the NBA. But guys would have been to the playoffs, like in 2011 and 2015. That Monty took these teams to the playoffs. It helps to have a guy who can relate to the players, who are he's mature, he's aged in the league, and he's able to be more of a player's coach as well as just the guy who can be just the not crack the whip, but be the authority on the sidelines.
And what the Suns really need, sorry, Greg, what the Suns really need is a salesman, because they need someone to come and say, look, it's not the train wreck you've heard it was, or at least it's not anymore. You come here, well, come be a part of something special. We're just starting to build with a nucleus of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. They need Monty Williams to go out there and be that salesman, and I think he could do it better, frankly, than Kokoschkov probably could have.
And honestly, not only that, but he took a veteran team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Then they basically threw everything out, started all over. So mentally, and it was one of the things I had, so mentally, he's prepared to do this because he's done this.
Yeah.
And that means a lot. He knows how to take a team from nothing to somewhere. And a team with a young star. Young star was AD. Got a young star here in Devin and a young star in Aiden. So he can go back and say, these are some of the things I said to AD and this is what worked. This is some of the things I said and this is what worked. That means a lot more coming from someone saying, I think this, it's like buying something at IKEA. You want someone that's put an IKEA bench together before, not your buddy that's never done it, and you're there for the next 9 hours.
That's a good call.
He's also had Monty has this experience of taking a bad situation and making it good.
Yes.
With the Sixers, what you've seen, of course, is the trusted process that's come along within the past 3 years. I mean, he's been there, he's seen that, and he's basically taking another bad situation and making it good with his hands, deep in the trenches.
Yeah, that's a good call. If you're going to go Monty versus Igor, right? Igor was super analytical. Monty can talk to these guys and hit them in a different place. Monty played in the league, right? He's coached top-line guys. So he can show and prove based on experience. I think it's just a communication style, right? That's fair.
I think he's also learned to talk to the millennial generation, as he mentioned yesterday. Like he's not big on the the Insta tweets or whatever.
Right.
So it's like I think he's learned millennial lingo. It's like you can't you can be honest with them, but you have to kind of do it in a certain way where you're not going to get upset and then post something like subtweet you on Twitter or whatever. So I think it's all learning experience for him.
I liked him as a Knick, and I liked him as one of the Fighting Irish, with John McLeod. Rest in peace, John McLeod.
Yeah.
You guys are getting me with this Ricky Rubio thing. Okay, so Ricky Rubio and Derrick Rose is a backup, and you like Garland.
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying that's the choice they have to make. Do you go all in with Garland, who if best case scenario, he is a guy who can be like a 20-10 year, or maybe not 20-10, but maybe like 12-10, in a couple of years? Or do you say, okay, we just got to stop getting younger, and you take, like you said, best player available, which I think is always a great idea, regardless of position, and look for a point guard in free agency. And that's where Monty Williams and James Jones come in as the salesman to say, look, it's not as bad as it sounds like out here. This is a new era for the Suns. Our owner's starting to listen to outside counsel. So I think that might be the best way to go. But if the Suns, do decide aren't able to get or don't want to get a point guard in free agency, Garland's probably the way to go.
What do you do?
With free agency, I believe that, you got to get a veteran to basically up the average age of these guys to somebody to look up to that's been there, and also to have somebody who's second in command to Monty. I think that's integral to help developing this team. Igor was brought in as a developmental coach. Monty's brought in as basically somebody who can be more strategic, and so somebody who is basically a floor general as a veteran. I think that's pertinent to the growth of this team.
Do you have Rubio's contract info?
I do.
What did he make last year?
Rubio, 14.8.
I don't know if the Suns can afford him. I mean, the Suns can be flexible, right? But if they use a mid-level exception, they've got around 12, 13 million for the mid-level. So he'd have to take a pay cut to come here.
Well, but then you're also talking about some different things too. Like,
Okay.
so Tyler Johnson would be a great move for a team that's trying to free up
Yep.
some space. He's 1-year deal because he's not crazy. He's going to opt in to the money.
For sure.
So
He's gonna take the
that's a
19
good
million.
deal. Now you have to start thinking, okay, is TJ Warren really coming back? Is there a spot for him on this team the way it's constructed? If you decide that you want to bring Oubre back, and I don't have the capology, so I apologize in front
That's
of
all
you,
good.
but if you're going to bring Oubre back and Mikal is your next guy coming up, you got to decide what you're going to do with Josh, because you can't end up in the same position you ended up in with Bender, where he's almost played himself out of getting you a really good trade for him. So what do you do with him? So Warren and Josh are in that situation where maybe the Suns, not we, package them together and get something going out so you free up some cap space. And maybe you take on something that's a 2-year deal, because this is more than a 2-year project anyway.
All right, that's all fair. Anything to add on free agency or the draft?
Well, you can use the draft pick to trade up for a free agent if you want.
Right.
I mean to trade up for another veteran and then sign a free agent. With the cap space, that would be the means to go if they want to throw that in a package for somebody that is going to be a marquee guy. Come this fall.
Yeah.
The only problem is you're picking 6. And this is not to disrespect anybody, but there's 1, there's 2,
Yeah.
and then there's Barrett, and then there's kind of everybody else.
It's like back in the NHL draft when there was Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel, and then the Coyotes got Dylan Strome. Who? Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
I
kind
don't,
of
I don't know any of those.
well, okay, but it's just so okay. So in this scenario, Connor McDavid is Zion Williamson, and Jack Eichel is John Morant.
All right.
Okay. So the Suns, or the Coyotes rather, the third best guy who's not on the team anymore. So that's essentially what basically, if you don't get the top 2, you're probably looking to trade.
Right. Who could you get for the number 6 pick package with Josh Jackson at the value he has now?
And Tyler Johnson's expiring
And Tyler
contract.
Johnson. Right, exactly.
What an awful 24 hours that was. They get Josh Jackson gets in trouble, and then you get the number 6 all the way down to number 6. Your trade value just goes from here to in the span of 24 hours.
So what do you guys do with Josh? You guys trade Josh?
Okay.
To who?
Yeah,
wants him?
I was thinking the same thing. I think Josh is a talent that hasn't necessarily reached a peak of where he could go, but then is it fair to say he's put in the work to reach that peak? Because he said something towards the end of the year in the locker room. He said, I always tend to play well at the end of the season. Well, at the end of the season, they're always out of the playoffs. There's nothing to play for. Now you're playing well. So diving deeper, what exactly does that mean? I mean, so
What if it means that he plays better once he figures out what he's doing? You've seen this with Josh. Early in the season, he kind of doesn't know what he's doing. He's had a couple
Figures it
different
out.
coaches, right? Earl had one idea for him. Jay Triano had another idea for him. And then last year, Igor. And the last 2 years, Josh has had a similar thing where he plays poorly, gets benched, and then plays better. I wonder if it's not just a matter of system and fit, or do you think the guy is showing us everything that he's got to show?
I think when you know that your job is on the line and you've been benched or you've been having some responsibility taken from you, it motivates you to want to show and prove that you were still worthy of the job.
Yeah.
That happened with him and McCall Bridges. You saw McCall Bridges come in and immediately have an instant impact. And then Josh Jackson was like, well, okay, you come in, with this, I need to come and match this in order to not be seen as the next Dragon Bender. And I feel like that's what Josh did as a rookie, to make the all-rookie second team, and that's what he did this past year because he knows that, going into his third year, it's important to really feel that he's not going to end up like Bender and not get picked up for that option.
So I think that there's still value in Josh Jackson in as much as he was taken 4th overall a couple years ago, but everybody kind of universally said he had as much talent as anybody in that draft. And if you can figure out how to use him, he's got a skill set that's really hard to replicate. That speed and athleticism, you don't just make that up. It's just a matter of what is he being asked to do. I could be crazy there. And I'm still thinking about this Ricky Rubio thing. This Ricky Rubio thing's got me.
Well, Josh, there comes a point, though,
Yeah.
where the player has to take it upon himself to do more.
Okay.
So I don't care how many. Devin Booker is this close to being an all-star.
Yeah.
And he's on coach number 12. So he worked his butt off to get to a certain
Throwing assistance, he's probably
point.
right.
Yeah, to get to a certain point.
Right.
So if you know that, I think that push should come from within. So am I saying trade him? No. What I'm saying though is you don't want to get yourself in a position where you wait so long
That you
that
can't
if
do
he
anything.
doesn't get
Yeah.
to that point, now you're kind of in that, wow, we drafted him number 4 and
In all fairness, though, I would say for guys like Josh Jackson, they've never in their entire lives been second or third fiddle in this case, ever. You know, he was the a star in high school, a star in college. Now he's got to learn how to kind of be a team player and
Yeah.
have that new role. And so I know that's kind of a bit simplistic, but I think that's got to be some growing pains. I'm sure when he was drafted by the Suns, he was thinking of being like 1 and 1A with Devin Booker, and now he's definitely way down there. Maybe he's a third option at best.
Absolutely, that's a fair point. It's actually why I like John Morant so much, because he struggled, right? Like they didn't know what he was going to be coming out of high school. He ended up going to Murray State instead of a larger school, and he picked himself back up and then made something of himself. And that's why Mikal Bridges works so well, because he knows his role, he feels his role.
Yeah.
I've talked to a bunch of people about this. We've probably had this conversation. There's like 10 stars in the NBA, right? Like there's like 10 guys who you build a team around, and then everybody else more or less is a role player. So then you just want your role player to be a little bit above average in the role that they fill. That's a great point, man. That's a great point. You guys have me all over the place right now. I thought I had this whole thing figured out.
You want to talk about Ricky Rubio some more?
Yeah, I know, right? This Ricky Rubio thing, I'm not okay.
I mean, touched on Dragic. He'll possibly come back. No, he's not coming back.
Wow. So listen,
He could pull a Carlos Dansby and make his third stint with the team.
Yes, he
Never know.
could.
very true.
But he'd have to wait till he's 80. So
Or you can bring Barbosa back.
Is he still around?
No, but my point is
Oh.
that'd be like his 5th time back.
That's true. he's a 3-timer as well, isn't
Yeah,
he, Barbosa?
yeah.
You're right.
all right. So, but it all comes back to this. If we're talking free agency, we're talking about perception. So that means we're talking about Robert Sarver. Is he in or out? Now, I've been saying for weeks, that this organization is different. I've been asking people about this all year. He's not as hands-on now as he used to be. I just got off the phone with Jerry Colangelo a couple of hours ago. He told me he recommended Monty take the job.
Right.
He believes that Robert Sarver is different. But there's still the question out there. So the question is, what do you guys think? Is Robert Sarver still who he was, or has he grown? Has he learned?
The other thing that I found encouraging from Monty's press conference was that he talked about how he and Robert Sarver, and he kind of mentioned this kind of in passing, it wasn't a big deal, but that they both made some mistakes. They talked about, we both made some mistakes in the past. I thought, Robert Sarver admitted he made a mistake. That's probably a step in the right direction.
We've
right
heard
there.
that from him before, too. If you remember 2 years ago when they announced that James Jones was coming in to help Ryan McDonough, that was the lead. That was the story. I made some mistakes as an owner. He said that Steve Nash made him feel like he was smarter than he had been. You do that to us, right? Steve Nash, right? You feel like
Hall
you got to
of Famer.
figure it out, right?
Yeah, Stoudemire and Marion helped as well.
Right, you
And
just
then-
roll the ball out there. I'm a genius.
Yeah, but it sounds like those two had some candid discussions about both mistakes that they've made. Which
Yeah.
again, if they build a rapport too, then maybe that's Sarver's not going to keep Monty Williams in his office until 1 a.m. trying to convince him to change his strategy. Maybe he'll trust him to make his own decision. So maybe Robert Sarver's gotten a wake up call finally that yes, despite all the money and success he's had in business over the years, maybe he said, I could have done a couple things better and actually believe it this time,
Yeah.
and let Monty Williams and James Jones do their thing.
do you
No goats.
think?
No goats coming.
No.
No
To the
goats.
office. Yeah.
Only the acronym, not the actual goat.
See, I think trust is a weird thing.
All right.
It's kind of hard to sit in your office when you're hiring first-time coaches and think they're making mistakes that you can fix.
Yeah.
Now he has a coach that's experienced. And the one thing about trust when you're in management is trusting yourself more than the person. And so now he's hired James and he's hired Monty, and now he has to know that if he's down there telling them what to do, that's basically him saying, I don't trust my own hire. And so now that finger's pointed back at you. So any CEO that comes in and buys a company that they didn't build from the ground up, they put people in place that they can trust to make the right decision, and they trust that they hired the right person. I think two things show this. One, Monty picked the Suns over the Lakers.
Yeah.
And there has never been a day on this earth that anyone, if you were selling popcorn, you would have picked Staples Center over across the street. So
We're going to have to cut this guy off. We don't say good things about the Lakers around here.
but now It's flipped, and you're looking at it at an organization that's been stable, and now that's kind of going through what the Suns went through before, and the Suns are rebounding. Well, that takes the owner saying, you know what, maybe I do need to do things differently. But what will show that is if they get off to a slow start, does he stay in that office, or does he run downstairs?
Yep.
See, and the whole thing, I say this all the time about him. If it starts to go a little wrong, like Showtime at the Apollo, someone needs to get that stick. Bring him back in. Bring him back up those stairs.
Get the Sandman.
Do you
Get the
guys
Sandman.
do you guys remember those Terry Tate commercials that the office linebacker? he needs to hire Robert Sarver needs to hire a Terry Tate. So when he's ever tempted to go downstairs, Terry Tate just tackles him and and stops him from going and just making a mess of things. He's his own worst enemy. He's got to have a Terry Tate out there just ready to just steamroll him if he ever tries to go downstairs.
Yes.
Ladies
trust
and
himself.
gentlemen, Shane Dale giving us a visual. We'll
Yep.
never be able to unsee.
Has to trust himself.
What do you think, Dana? Sarver, is he who he was, or has he grown?
I feel like if you go through 5 coaches in 5 seasons,
Right.
then you're gonna want, and that's under the last GM. Yeah, your owner is definitely going to want to have some hands in what's going on. I feel with James Jones is that the difference with James is that he's a former player, and somebody that the players look up to, and they understand his knowledge of the game. Ryan McDonough, I mean, he was young. I mean, he's like, what, 37, 38?
I think he was 36 when he took the job. Am I wrong?
36. Yeah, he's still in his 30s.
No, he's 38 because he's my age. I remember.
Right,
I remember thinking, what have I done with my life? This guy's already a G.
So it's a little different where you don't have that same type of, you don't have a way to relate to the coaches. I mean, to the coaches and also other front office people who've been there and done that as a player. And so James has that, and so Sarver sees as what he's done as a GM as starting to come together with this first year. Even though they didn't have a great season, they started to have a season where they were showing some promise, and the games where they were losing in fighting efforts, and they basically were taken to the brink by a lot of the top teams. They beat the Bucks twice.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's crazy.
They
They
did.
beat
Of course.
They beat the Bucks
And the
twice.
Warriors.
And the Warriors, they beat the Warriors on the road.
We saw glimpses of how good they can
Yes.
play.
Right.
Small
You
glimpses.
saw, and of course, the Suns made Magic quit, like you wrote. Wow. So it's
What happened?
Wow.
The Lakers lost,
Wow.
right, to the Suns in Phoenix, and that was what knocked the Lakers out of playoff contention.
Right.
Oh, I remember that
And
night.
we talked about that, like about in October a little bit, how that could potentially happen. Is
Right.
At that 8th spot, that is pretty hard to get to in the top in the West with those 8 teams. That could be coming down to one game like the year before between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves.
So
Suns got him fired.
So the Cardinals beat the Packers, and then the Packers get their coach fired because, or the Mike
Yes,
McCarthy gets
Steve
himself fired.
Wilkes got the Packers coach fired.
And then
yes.
the Suns beat the Lakers, and that's why Magic quits.
Yeah.
So basically, you lose to a Valley team. And
Right.
Wait, I could go back even further. ASU beat SC,
Okay.
and their coach got fired on the tarmac.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So those things with Sarver, and to circle back,
Ladies
A
and
lot of
gentlemen,
pressure
Phoenix
when you come to
sports
Phoenix.
run around messing stuff up. But go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
to circle back about Sarver, he sees the potential that James has as somebody who's been in the league a long time and understands how to make these, how to compartmentalize the roles that need to be fulfilled and create this system with the right coach that can bring them to some sort of success. It's going to take maybe a year, 2 or 3, but they gave him a 5-year deal, and Sarver has basically learned from his own mistakes, like you said before, and saying that, James, I'm going to allow you to deal the reins rather than having first-year GM and 5 years ago with McDonough, and a first-year coach with Igor as the 5th in 5 seasons.
And going back to free agency, I could certainly see like Monty Williams and James Jones being able to like meet with a free agent and have just a better like in-depth conversation than maybe like Ryan McDonough and Igor Kokoschkov would
right.
have. You
could see that.
could see that happening easily.
Well, because let's be honest, James is more of a people person.
Yeah.
So he can relate to people more. And this isn't kicking dirt on the old regime, but Ryan just didn't seem to, from people
He's
I
more of a
spoke
numbers
to,
guy.
He's a numbers guy. And numbers guys and people guys are
Not the same.
not the same, especially
Right.
when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. No, I like the structure that they have. James Jones is there to see it conceptually. Jeff Bauer's there to help him figure out the nuts and bolts of it.
Right.
Trevor Buckstein's there to figure out the contracts and the
number
numbers
guy.
of it.
Yep.
And then Monty Williams is there to kind of bring it all together. And it really seems like everybody trusts each other. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of ego involved. We haven't seen Trevor. We haven't seen Jeff. We've only seen James, and he's constantly talking about everybody
Yep.
else, right?
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and Monty and he really seemed to have a nice rapport at the opening
And the
news
humility
conference.
that Monty showed yesterday seemed very authentic to me. I don't know.
Didn't
about
it,
you
right?
guys.
It did.
Truly, truly. Well, look, so maybe there's stuff to look forward to again. I mean, look, the number 6 pick is not the top 2 or 3 picks, but there are still options. We'll see what ends up happening there. I think free agents that weren't in play before maybe are going to be in play now. Maybe. And then it's going to be on Robert Sarver to kind of show and prove. The thing that we believe to be true, we believe that he's adjusted his approach. Now we just need to give it time and see whether it's what it is.
Here's what's funny. We talk about, you said Kevin Durant, and I kind of scoffed at it, but think about it. They're saying him and Kyrie have thoughts of going to the Knicks. Sorry. But there's no more messed up front office than New York. So what makes any situation a perfect situation now? I mean, we're talking about a team that had one of his best players arrested during a game. We haven't gone that far yet. So,
Yet.
So, in nowadays NBA where branding isn't New York, Chicago, LA, and if you really stop and think about it, the 3 marquee teams, because I know the Clippers and the Nets had good years, but the 3 marquee NBA staples haven't been in the playoffs for a while. Yeah. And so your brand, your personal brand, can be sold anywhere. This is not a small market.
Right.
So why not at least go after some of those players?
If Kevin Durant wants to prove he
Right.
can win a championship without being surrounded by a bunch of stars, Phoenix is the place for him.
I would love if he interprets things that way,
Yeah.
right? Just from a competitive standpoint. Forget about the fact that I'd love to cover a winning team or the fact that I'd love to cover a guy with that level of talent, right? And let's take the injury off the table too, because we don't know if the calf or the Achilles, we don't know. Let's take that off the table also. But just as a guy who likes competition, who likes to see when people go at it, if he says, you know what, Golden State, forget it. You guys got it without me, go ahead. I'm going to show you what I can do. And then he goes down to Phoenix and helps turn that thing around. All right, listen, I think that's enough. If you guys, is there any other ground we should have covered?
We should stop right with Kevin Durant to the Suns. Absolutely.
Kevin Durant coming to the Suns. Okay, Greg Moore, AZ Central Sports, Shane Dale, ABC 15, Paul Richardson, The Sports Cave, Dana Scott, AZ Central Sports. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next week.